Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host Owen James, the channel that brings you your everyday Rangers news. Guys, we are going to talk another name that has now slipped into the Rangers manager debate. Look, it seemed to me, from what I was saying yesterday, to be narrowing down. It seemed to be kind of coming to a situation where it was going to be Martin or Ancelotti, or maybe Gerrard. Although it doesn't look like Gerrard is now out of the race. Lots of stories saying that Steven Gerrard is no longer in the race to be Rangers manager. That seems to be the overwhelming report that is coming out tonight. Interesting news, if true. Apparently his family are settled where they are. They don't want to come back to the UK at present. Apparently, one other reason maybe could obviously to do with the tax situation, where it'd obviously be taxed a massive amount on that huge amount of money that he took into his bank account over his time in Saudi. Look, I think if Gerrard is out of the running, then so be it. Fine. I wouldn't have been against Gerrard. I can see why people were against it. I personally, would have welcomed him back. But looks like that one is now kind of drifting out, despite what Dave King may have said. I think people kind of took too much stead in what Dave King said. Dave King said that it seemed the most obvious candidate. Well, I think, Dave King is right. That, he did seem the most obvious candidate because he's the last person to win the league title with Rangers. And obviously Dave King has a very good relationship with him. The fact that he was obviously, involved with the club at that time. And, I think we've got to kind of remember that actually Dave King realistically definitely now has no say in who the next manager is going to be. The present board, in theory, barring a last minute collapse of the takeover, do not have any say in who the next manager is going to be. Look, a lot of the talk coming out of Glasgow, it seems to be that all this management stuff is being done out of Ibrox. It has been done away from Ibrox. It has been done away from the club, and it has been done through the 49ers and Andrew Kavanagh. They are doing everything to do with this. It has nothing to do with the present board, and they're being kept well out of the loop. No wonder why, after disasters they've made in the past. So, look, who is this new name? What is this new name? Perhaps who is this new name? We'll stick to that one. A guy who's previously apparently been interviewed for the Rangers job, or approached about the Rangers job at the time that Michael Beale was appointed as manager. Yes, it is the Italian Francesco Farioli. Farioli was most recently Ajax manager. He recently left the club. Apparently there was substantial disagreements with the board that led to unsettlement and led to Ajax's title charge coming well and truly off the rails. At one point, Ajax were 9 points clear at the top of the Eredivisie and looked like they were cruising to the title under Francesco Farioli. They also played some pretty impressive stuff in the Europa League. However, after a rumoured fallout with the board, Farioli and Ajax kind of came well and truly off the rails. The title charge smashed into the buffers, and PSV passed them and won the title, and they certainly did nothing in Europe in the end. But Farioli is seen as being one of the continent's most talented up-and-coming coaches. Again, someone with little playing experience. It seems to be the modern thing, doesn't it? His senior career was with a team called Margin Coperta between 2007-2008, and certainly we have nothing on that in particularly. He studied philosophy and sports science at the University of Florence. He began his coaching career with Margin Coperta, a lower division Italian football club where he was the goalkeeping coach after previously being the goalkeeper there. That's where he played, but he never ever broke through and never ever made anything of a career in the game. Farioli is only 36 years old, from Baja in Italy, and like I said, he was a goalkeeper. His managerial career, we'll look at his whole career in a moment. But in terms of his actual managerial career, he started in 2021 with Fatih Karagümrük in Turkey before going on to Alanyaspor between 21 and 23. He was then Nice manager in France between 23 and 24, and then obviously got the Ajax job in 2024. Some may remember Rangers played Ajax in a pre-season friendly and lost to them under Farioli's directing from the sidelines. Like I said, he's had a varied career with a number of different clubs. who is he inspired by? Where does his ideology come from? Where does his playing style come from? Well, it comes from a very well-known Italian coach, someone who had success in England with Brighton and has had success with Marseille in France, Roberto De Zerbi. He worked as the goalkeeping coach at Benvenuto under De Zerbi between 2017 and 2018. He then followed De Zerbi to Sassuolo, where he continued as goalkeeping coach between 2018 and 2020. So, he has had an awful lot of time working with De Zerbi. As you can see on that graphic on the left-hand side of the screen, he's done work certainly, pre De Zerbi. He was the goalkeeping coach at Lucchese. He was also the games operations manager with Qatar under-17s. He worked with the Aspire Academy as a goalkeeping coach. He was also an advisor to the Italian national team before going to work for De Zerbi at Benvenuto and then Sassuolo. He then went out on his own, became the assistant manager of Alanyaspor before becoming the manager of Kagamaruk, then back to being the manager of Alanyaspor, where he got his first break as an assistant manager. From there on to Nice, and then on to Alanyaspor. So from Nice, then back on to Ajax. So you look at his record; it's progressively improved as the clubs have improved. Realistically, 27 games at Karagamuk, averaging 1.52 points per game. Win percentage, I'm sure you want to know that one. And there was a lot of people who like the old win percentages, don't you? With Karagamuk, his win percentage was 40.74%. From there, he went to Alanyaspor, where he had a 41.67% win percentage. Now, before anybody gets on the kind of back of this is not good enough, you've got to remember that these two teams are pretty much nothing teams in a league that are dominated by the likes of Fenerbahce, Besiktas, etc., etc. Then he went to Nice, where he had a 44.74% managerial success rate before going to Ajax, where he had a 64.81%. Now, maybe the Ajax percentage is kind of a little bit more realistic of where he would be at Rangers. Ajax, PSV and Feyenoord very much dominate the Dutch league in the same way that Celtic and Rangers dominate the Scottish league. He did have some success in France with Nice. He finished 5th during the 23-24 season and, secured the Europa League qualification. Between 2023 and 24, he had them briefly challenging PSG, although they fell away. Nice kind of didn't really commit the funds and fell way behind the likes of Marseille and PSG in France and Monaco as well. As to what type of football does Francesco Farioli play, I think that's obviously something that a lot of people will be interested in. He basically, he is inspired by Roberto De Zerbi. Does bring his own ideas though into the De Zerbi philosophy. His style is based on keeping the ball. It's based on ball possession, holding the ball, using the ball well. He builds play carefully from the back. It's a possession-based style. He looks to control the midfield. He looks to play very centrally. He doesn't looks to sort of block the middle of park. His teams use a lot of short, quick passes to move teams around. Certainly something the Rangers have been lacking in recent times. You look at our build-up play, it's often passive, it's often slow, it's often not aggressive enough. It often doesn't bring teams out. So Farioli certainly brings that fast, quick, attacking, possession-based game. He concentrates on a very high press to regain the possession as well. He, like I said, he does use a lot of quick passing sequences. His attacking play focuses on trying to find space between defenders, creating advantages on the wings, overloads on the wings, and involves getting lots of players into the opposition box. Certainly something that Rangers fans would welcome. When he's kind of using a more defensive formation, his teams tend to stay very compact, protecting central areas and forcing attacks towards the sideline while remaining ready to press high again when able. So it's a possession-based style. It's a quick passing, aggressive style. It's using the centre and the wings. It's a varying the points of attack. Very much a varied way of playing the game. So Farioli, like I said, is someone who is very, very highly thought of within the European game. it's interesting, isn't it, that that this name has now kind of sprung up as been a possibility. He is, like I said, someone who is very highly thought of. Again, this is another candidate who doesn't have that playing experience. Like Davide Ancelotti, doesn't have that playing experience. It certainly seems that to the 49ers, this is not something that will stand in their way. I think, the way he left Ajax wasn't ideal. The way that the season fell apart at Ajax wasn't ideal. Realistically, I'm sure he would have wanted to finish the season a whole lot better, win a league title. If he had, would he then be available now? Probably not. But, he certainly is a very interesting candidate. There are one or two concerns over him, in terms of the fact that, the way that the kind of fallout happened and the way that the season fell apart at Ajax to some degree. That is a concern, whilst obviously there are positives to him, the way he plays football, his record at Ajax, and like I said, there is, for me, a comparison between the Dutch Eredivisie and obviously the Scottish Premier League, where like I said, Feyenoord, PSV, and Ajax dominate the Eredivisie. Celtic and Rangers dominate the Scottish League. So you've got a kind of similarity there. So that 64-65% win percentage is probably more kind of where Farioli is currently at in terms of the game. But look, guys, it's another interesting name. It's another fascinating name in Francesco Farioli. Now, it does. I mean, you can kind of look at this whole process in two ways for me. Yes, we are now, 24 days away from the start of pre-season. You can look at it in terms of the negative side of it, which is Rangers need to get a bloody move on. This is ridiculous how long this is taking. They've known, since kind of, I think, probably a good few weeks into the end of the season, before the end of the season, that they weren't going to appoint Barry Ferguson, that, moves should be made to bring somebody in. However, you can also look on the positive, that they're doing their due diligence. They're looking at a number of candidates. They're making sure that whatever appointment they make is the right one. They are putting a lot of effort into finding the right person. Now, also the other situation may be that Rangers will not name a new manager until the takeover is finalised, if, as has been reported, this is a situation where the kind of the appointment, the interviews, the candidate selection, etc., has been taken away from the club at this moment in time, and it has been done through the 49ers, through Andrew Kavanagh, through Greta Steinson, through Kevin Thelwell. You've got to remember with Kevin Thelwell as well, Everton's season has only just finished, so he'll have only just left the club. So, because it's been taken away and because it's been done externally, away from the club by people who are not yet theoretically involved with the club, even though they are informally involved with the club, that no announcement can and will be made until any takeover announcement is finalised. Now, as Dave King said, that we're looking at sort of mid-June for that finalisation of the takeover. So, it may be that we have to show some patience. We have to show a bit of, calm, and understand that this managerial announcement is probably not going to come now until mid-June time, once the club is formally taken over by the 49ers Enterprises and Andrew Kavanagh. Guys, I'd love to get your thoughts on this one. What do you think? Francesco Farioli, is he a candidate you want? I mean, certainly from what you were telling me in the comments yesterday, you don't want Russell Martin under any circumstances. Is it now a straight fight between two Italians, between Davide Ancelotti and Francesco Farioli? Is that the direct fight now? Or is Russell Martin still involved? Because at the end of the day, the fans don't get to pick the manager. Look, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, it's been a pleasure speaking to you here on the channel. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, always, we are the people.
decides to go elsewhere, let him go. Obviously, for the right amount of money, basically, paraphrasing it. So yeah, obviously 22 years old, got 22 goals and 12 assists in 48 games for Frankfurt. So yeah, Liverpool seemingly do want to sign a number 9. There's a few out there. Interest in him. This one isn't potentially as straightforward as playing who wants to join us, and you've got to dot I's and cross T's. There is a battle on for the Frankfurt striker, and time will tell who wins it. Liverpool and Chelsea seem to be up there. Some reports suggest Chelsea have stolen the march and maybe further down the line. Other reports say it's a bit more of an open race, so we'll keep an eye on that one over the next couple of days. Hugo Ekitike looks like he might be one of the potential that Liverpool go for in terms of signing a striker this summer. Let's move on then. Potential couple of outgoings. Let's start with Cody Gakpo. According to numerous reports over the last couple of days, Bayern Munich are interested in signing Cody Gakpo from Liverpool. However, this morning, Lewis Steele, friend of the show, of the Mail, said that Cody Gakpo is very likely to still be at Liverpool next season. Bayern Munich's interest in the Dutch winger is real, but Liverpool are happy with him and expect him to stay. So Bayern do want Cody Gakpo. It looks like Liverpool are more than happy to keep Cody Gakpo, would like to keep Cody Gakpo, and I'm not surprised. He had an excellent season. Him and Luis Diaz on that left hand side battling for that position was really fruitful for Liverpool, and I can't see why Arne Slot, given how much potential change there could be throughout his squad, would look to be making another move somewhere else. So Cody Gakpo, of course, teams want him. He's a very good player, but Liverpool want to keep him. Maybe something that rumbles on, hopefully something that doesn't. I just want to get Liverpool if we can, but yeah, Gakpo, the Bayern Munich interest is real, but Liverpool are more than very, very, very likely, as Lewis put it, to keep him. Let's move on then to Kevin Kelleher. According to reports from Sky Sports that Brentford are in pole position to sign Kevin Kelleher from Liverpool. Their goalkeeper Mark Flecken is expected to join Bayer Leverkusen this summer, leaving Brentford legally number 1. And as luck would have it, Kevin Kelleher is on the market. The goalkeeper go round rather than spin. Mamardashvili ends up at Liverpool, Flecken goes to Leverkusen, and then you get Kevin Kelleher at Brentford. He's going to be number 1 now. The time is right for him to go and do that. It appears like a good Premier League plenty, but yeah, obviously Mamardashvili, Liverpool are seemingly ready to let Kevin Kelleher leave and for him. And yeah, hopefully it works out for him, and hopefully Liverpool's possible for him as they do let him go. Sad to see him go,